Hi, I'm Liz.
And I'm Rhea.
Welcome to Karma's My Bitch, a podcast about love,
sex,
connection,
abundance,
joy,
purpose,
peace,
and how life isn't simply the stories we tell ourselves.
Now time is not a new concept.
No, we've spoken about it before, but it's funny because I've been thinking about it a lot, really weirdly.
Is it weird?
I mean,
or are we just preoccupied with this season?
Because
is that synchronicity or magic?
Or fate. Well, didn't you say that synchronicity is always fate?
Exactly. Which is what we're talking about today.
Cool. Because really, like...
that was not the super convincing cool.
Oh,
but okay.
Oh, fine.
Like, nice.
Because you know what's interesting about Now Moment is that really... when I was a kid, I always thought to myself, and I was a bit of a weird child, I admit that, but I always thought, how can you be sure that all the past was just basically memories downloaded into our brain and the future doesn't exist and all we have is this moment now, right? Mm-hmm. And as I've gotten older, I was like, I wasn't so far off because the past is just a perception. It's just a perception. And we've discussed in previous episodes of the season how I was rereading conversations I've had with people in the past. And I was like, oh, that did not go down the way that I thought. Or, oh, they did not say what I thought they said. And all that kind of stuff. The past isn't as we knew it to be necessarily. And the future is unwritten. Well, it's written in many ways. And I guess we're going to talk about fate a bit today. So that will be the written part. But it's also unknown. So really, when we talk about time and magic, and then I think about the now moment, I'm like, yeah, well, it all makes sense because now really is all there is. And so we can't be acting from a place of this will happen next or this happened before, so it could happen next. It's a bit like what we were saying in the previous episode of you walk into the room as the most beautiful person in the room, you interact in that way, and those are the outcomes that come as a result. Okay, so
that took like 3 minutes for you to bring in that.
Yeah, we're going to get faster. We'll see. Next time, maybe I'll just start with it. But the thing is and then like what I've realized, and I remember having this revelation with you a while ago where I was like, Liz, I think magic operates outside of time. And maybe actually what I'm learning is that just time isn't linear because there'll be stuff I do months, years before that make no sense at the time. Right? And I'm like, but I have to do this now. And then I forget about it. And then in the exact moment I need something, well, turns out it's there because of what I've done. Mm-hmm. And so what I realize is that like we have to be in the present. We have to be in the now moment and do whatever feels correct for us in that moment, regardless of outside of controlling or anything else, because there will be a reason, and that reason will be for our happiness, our greatest good, all the betters and even betters and the mores. And by being able to be present in the now and by able to be acting in the now, we actually end up creating the future that we do want because we're coming from a space of light rather than a space of fear.
You also sort of end up living in your future at the same time. When it comes to magic, now is the most critical piece. Well, it's one of the most critical pieces.
I was going to be like, okay.
The most might be a little bit of an overstatement, but it is, if you consider the three critical pieces to magic, it's power, it's now time, and it's pure detachment. Expectations lead to judgment, and so you need complete freedom.
Okay.
But freedom isn't the critical piece. Again, it's non-judgment. We'll just use that term. So it's non-judgment, now time, and power. Those would be the three critical pieces that without one, you cannot have magic. So when we're talking about pure magic, you need love. But when we're talking about three critical pieces of magic, generally, you need those three.
Okay, fine.
Now, if you want enhanced magic, as in pure magic, etc., then yes, you need those other bits, right? You need
like
all
love.
Those other elements. Those
like
are
love.
important.
Okay, fine.
Yes, like love. Okay.
No, I'm trying to understand.
like love. Just say love. Just say love, Liz. Please say love. I need to be validated this morning. I'm like, fine, love, whatever.
No, I'm just trying to understand. Let's get a coffee.
So when we're talking about non-linear time and multidimensional space. Yeah, I'm not going to get all super sci-fi, nor am I going to get like super physics on people, because that's not what this podcast is about. Quite simply, what that means and how magic operates within that is that objects can appear or something can transpire from one second to the next because they already exist in another time space, which is why things do not really happen linearly. They've already existed. So you can just imagine layers of time on top of one another.
Go on.
Well, that's my only explanation. Like I said, I'm not going to get all physics on people. But because we consider past. It happened X number of years ago or whatever. And then we consider future as something that has not yet happened. But if we collapse time, which we know everything can exist and has already happened in many ways because of our consciousness, those things are layered. Now, it is not to say that everything in the future has happened. We can always create. There's always the possibilities for. But what weaves all those possibilities together, dun 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 dun, here we go again, fate.
Okay.
Right? So
this actually makes a lot of sense, because when you're thinking about elevated knowing, like we were talking in the last episode, well, it's elevated knowing because you know it has happened, can happen, will happen, therefore is happening.
Exactly. So it's not even the feeling of, it's the knowing plus, as we said, the elevated knowing. And that elevated knowing comes from knowing our fate. So fate is what allows for and encompasses like the series of single solitary moments. So in those single solitary moments are what we call sort of points along our fate.
Yeah. The moments you meet someone, you make certain choices, all those
I
things.
get this job, this happened, that happened, and they're sort of significant because they're moving me towards something, right?
Yeah.
In terms of my learning, my understanding, I got my driver's license at this age, that was my first step towards freedom or blah, whatever. However, it could be as minor and insignificant as a little life step, and it could be even bigger of like, I landed my first job, which opened me up, or I had this particular relationship, which then taught me and opened me up in this other way. Whatever those are, those single solitary moments are strung together by our consciousness and wherever that consciousness is at any given time. So when we're talking about magic, we're talking about, and I think this was in the first episode, heightened awareness.
Okay.
That's another way to really view how consciousness works with magic. So in heightened awareness, we are so clear that we can really see the bigger, as we said in the previous episode, bigger picture is huge when it comes to magic. Not that we live from that space, so you cannot have expectations that, as I conceive this whole future, I know all the steps to get there. It's like, you know what? I see that that's not just a possibility, but a probability that I'm going to get to that place. I just don't know every single step, as you said.
Yeah.
And if I try to construct all those steps to get there, I will not get there. Because I need to be traversing my fate. But the more I understand myself, the more that heightened awareness is going to get me there. In the easiest, most magical way possible.
Because when you're in your karmic reality, right, you're just like reacting and responding to everything through this kind of pain lens. This could hurt, therefore I have to try and control it so it doesn't.
Yeah.
This is the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So I am going to respond and act from that place. This is what could have happened, which hurt me, and this is what will happen, which hurt me. So I'm going to manage it through that way. And so then all you end up doing is creating shit as a result. Like I said, you turn up in that room and you act and react like you're going to get hurt.
Yeah, because in your karmic reality, you're mitigating and you're hedging all the time, right?
Yeah.
But when you're sort of piling on more shit, you're just creating shitty scenarios. Well, if this happens, can you know? Because there might be someone else in the room. And that impacts how things happen. That impacts the energy. That interaction will define a lot. And we can't sit there and play that out in our heads.
Because if someone else is in the room who's just as light, who knows what you can create together.
Yeah.
I just think back to those moments where I assumed I was going to get hurt and someone was telling me something that was not hurtful, but I read it through the lens of hurtfulness. And so I responded in that way and then continued to try and control and make sure that I wasn't going to get hurt, and then I drove everyone away, right? Yeah. So it's not so much about mirroring their shit. It's about just piling on more shit, bringing my shit into it, as it were, in that case.
And then all that shit becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'll never escape my shit.
Exactly. Where actually, if you just turn up, I mean, look, I do it. Everyone's different. My way of doing it is, why don't we come from a place of fine? There's that, but there's also the other side, which is it could be all the absolute opposite, but even better than you could have dreamed, has happened and will happen and is continuing to happen. And that's when you talk about fate and how destiny is a small part of it. We have to hit those points. We have to have those reckonings. We have to have those moments where just like, wait a second, actually, I am not seeing this in a way that serves me. I am not interacting with this in a way that serves me. I am creating a world that does not serve me. And the one thing that moves us from the shit reality to the great reality is that. And it's not a mindset thing. It just has to start with an acknowledgement of the possibilities, right? And the more you kind of move through your consciousness, the more you acknowledge those possibilities and act from that space, the more those possibilities become a given until they're not possibilities at all, but probabilities, as you just said.
Yeah. And that's what makes memory so unreliable. So when you sort of talked about how you reread some messages from somebody from a couple years ago, and it didn't say what you thought it said because you were reading them through your pain filter.
Yes.
Now, but your consciousness today allowed you to read them differently. Entirely. And to read them more accurately and somewhat more objectively.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's what the detachment is. Precisely.
So you went from your pain reality of this is what this is saying to your non-pain reality of, oh, wow, I completely misread that, which then throws an entire perspective around your past, which was any of that real?
Yeah.
The only thing that was real was my pain in that moment, not anything else. Yet we take it like it's real. Yeah. We make our pain so real that we don't realize how much we've actually just created it. So the more we operate from that perspective of pain, the more we make it real. Now, I'm not saying we should just go and deny it and act like it's not there and therefore it won't exist. That's not true because it will always show up, as we've said, unless you've burned it out. So you got to burn it out and burn it out, which is what you've done.
Yes.
And Compassionate You was like, oh, that poor girl who read that message so wrong, then, oh well.
But I wouldn't have been able to get to the place where I read all of that if I hadn't worked through it time and time again, continued working through my heart, continued listening to myself. And in my case, continued, because obviously I skew towards the negative. I skew towards I've been hurt, right?
Or I'm going to be hurt.
Yeah. I skew towards that. In my case, it was, can you just allow? You've got to crack open a window. At some point, you've got to crack open that third way. So that it's not all going to blow up into shit. It's not all going to be, as you've written it, which are two different things in some ways, because we straddle the it's going to hurt so much, or it could be the dream life of all time. You've got to just open up that third way. You've got to open up that door so someone else can step it through it. The more I was following my heart, listening to myself, allowing myself to open that third way, just open the door, open the fucking door, the more I was seeing what my love could create, right? Because I was opening that door with trust, faith, hope, or knowing, right? And in doing so, in living my purpose, in engaging what brought me joy, and in putting love back into my life, I ended up experiencing so much more of that love, so much more of that joy, because that was being reflected back to me.
We don't need another person to do that, because a lot of people think if they hear you say that, they're going to be like, yes, as soon as I get that relationship, I'm going to be able to do
at
that.
All. It wasn't, yes, some of them were through relationships, but not the relationships you think, and not for as long as you think, and not for as significant as you think. And I've said this before, some of the stuff that happened to me was a moment with myself, writing something, learning something, laughing about something, singing about something, doing anything that brought me joy, recording something. This morning when we started these episodes, you were tired and cranky. I was confused and controlly. And now look at us. I'm channeling my light. I'm doing something I love, doing it with someone I love.
Thank you.
And clarity comes.
Yeah.
So,
really does.
and the clarity isn't in what I want to happen, although you can be really clear on what you desire. The clarity is just, I know what my next step is.
Yeah.
And my next step will always be the same step, FYI, which is open the fucking door.
So when we're exercising love, we are shining our light. Mm-hmm. And that light illuminates all those dots along our fate. And that's what keeps us traversing all those lines, is that joy. So when we're and this is why love is so fundamental to fate as well. I mean, I hope you just feel really validated right now. Love and magic, love and fate. Whoa.
I'm so validated.
So we just keep progressing. We keep going because we're like, yes, this is amazing. That is why we think relationships are so critical to our lives and to our fate, that life almost can't begin until we have that, that quote unquote relationship.
But that relationship is, and I can't believe I'm going to be the one to say this. That quote unquote relationship is the relationship with us. Yes. Because as we've said before, you don't love the other person. You love you with the other person. Mm-hmm. The relationship you're looking for is the one where you are the happiest, joyfulest, best version of you. Mm-hmm. And we keep thinking someone else will deliver that to us, but they won't. So 100% right. Relationships are the key, but it's the relationship. It's the experience of us in ourselves.
When we're together, as you're shining and I'm shining, and we have all these we're feeling all these feelings around each other, and we're magnifying that.
Yeah.
And it's that magnification that we think, wow, this is my person. You can't have that unless that big love is really wired in.
Yeah.
And if it's not there in the beginning, I mean, maybe you develop it as you grow and evolve. That might be a bit challenging, etc. But really, but that's beside the point. But that is why love is so, I'll just go back to that. But that is why love is so critical to fate. Mm-hmm. Now, when we get to a magical reality, okay, so we're in our non-comic reality. Love is guiding the way, Rhea style. And fate is still the pursuit of happiness. It's the pursuit of bliss. So that really is what lies, I wouldn't say on the other side, but that is effectively what we're doing. And now when we talk about fate, we've always kind of described it as the sort of large tapestry, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is if we consider bliss as an end point,
it's just a portion of the tapestry.
It's just not the most accurate way to understand it. It's actually the end point of our consciousness.
Okay. So it's just when the tapestry maybe changes color.
That's probably the best way to view it now, but I think that there's another way we're going to understand it.
Okay.
Because we're always, as humans, and in that sort of linear time, we're still very much stuck in this idea of future being away from us and something we're progressing toward. So even when we talk about the pursuit of happiness, it sounds like it's something that is something we have to chase or we're moving toward in that. But the reality is that as we move, we're still kind of in place because it's now. And we're just uncovering layers and layers of consciousness to get there. So when we get to a magical reality, that is in our non-karmic reality, so that all is possible. So all is possible is the true definition of magic, which I think is really cool. Joy and love are givens. I don't know how you feel about that, but I hope you're okay with that.
I'm very happy about it.
That love is a given? Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's true, though.
Yeah.
Because listen, yes, there is always going to be moments where you kind of like feel a little bit more dulled or a little bit more shiny, right? But ultimately, you've created enough of your world that you're usually doing things that bring you joy and that where you're shining your light, right?
Yeah.
As I said, you're tired and cranky, but you're doing a podcast you love.
Very much. Very
much. Like that's so it does make sense. We just have to allow life to unfold in an easy way.
Yeah. Where all can unfold, not just the things we think we need or want or desire, but all.
Because that gives space for more, right? Precisely. More than we could have seen. And that's what I always had a fundamental issue with manifestation and all those things, is that the person, and I know that a lot of manifestation teachers try and reconcile this issue, which is what if what I wanted when I get there, I don't want anymore, right?
Oh, okay.
And they're like, oh, well, then just say no again, I guess. Just say no. Like, but actually,
is that how they skirt around it?
that's how they skirt around it. But the truth is that as we keep hitting different points, as we keep allowing for more to come into our lives, we are changing, we're growing, we're evolving, we're becoming bigger people. If I was stuck living a life that I thought I wanted whilst I was in my karma, I'd be miserable.
Yeah. I always feel bad about karma. Yeah. I mean, the original chapter, I think in one of our books, An Adventure, was like a gift from the gods. And when we like set it aside, and I went back and I was like, oh, it was a chapter about karma. And I was like, oh, karma's a gift from the gods. That makes sense. It is a gift. It's a gift that brings us back to our power. So we bash karma a lot. And then I have to be like, but poor karma.
No, I don't bash karma. I bash me and my karma.
Yeah. Okay. But even then, that's a little icky. No, but anyway,
I mean, compassion and all
fine.
the rest.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying that, like, I was, as we said, when we're in a pain reality, what we want is relief from that pain. We don't want joy. Joy, we don't even understand. We think relief from the pain is joy. It's not joy.
Yeah. It's, I mean, massively confused. But the beauty of karma and the karmic process, if I dare say it, is that it's very simple and straightforward.
Yes, just follow your heart. Keep saying yes or no, depending on what you want, and then
that's the karmic undoing process. I'm actually just talking about a life in karma. As painful as it is, it's very simple and straightforward.
It is.
One foot in front of the other. I'm just going to do what the best I can, engage in a coping mechanism to make it better. But I go from point A to point B, etc. And
I mean, this kind of life, it requires you to really hold a lot of responsibility for yourself. It requires you to be constantly willing to be honest with yourself. It requires you to stretch yourself all the time. And that's why we said magic in some ways is unforgiving, because and we talk about love, saying love makes you worthy of love whilst also loving, requires conviction in oneself.
It does. It requires the utmost desire for more all the time.
And it requires
your favorite word.
And it also requires a level of fearlessness that we don't really, we can't hold in karma. But saying that, we do go from simple and straightforward to ease and grace, right? Where if you are fearless, if you are detached, if you are enjoying your life, and it's not about looking for relief from it, then you're just with arms wide open, right?
Yes.
Like whatever comes next, it gives more to the immersion. You're excited. I mean, I remember the first touches of magic in my life.
Do you? I don't remember.
I do. But I remember being in the shower and being like, what cool thing is going to happen today?
I remember you sharing that. I actually remember you sharing that.
And I didn't realize was me starting to understand how to live a magical life.
Yeah. So it's funny because we did have a season, I don't think it was every single episode of that season, where we talked about the intersection of fate and magic.
Yes.
And I don't think we fully appreciated everything that came through either, because I don't think we completely understood what was going on. I think we mostly understood fate. We kind of understood magic, and we were just trying to understand them together. So when we talk about for more to emerge, interestingly enough, more is in our fate.
Yeah. More's all the cool things that we've written that haven't experienced, that we can't even see. More capacity to live, more possibilities to exercise, more options to choose, more ways to exercise our freedom. I've written a book and now it's becoming a movie, and now it's becoming, whatever. Like, it's all the things that follow that we may have thought maybe. And also it's all the extra stuff that we didn't see coming. Like, I'm now going to write a totally different genre of books.
Yeah.
Like, it's all of that stuff. It's all the things that we couldn't have seen coming. Or as simple as, I'm going to do a podcast with a lady because I want to sort out my life. And now look, right? That's my fate. That's all the more.
Yeah. So magic facilitates the extra on top of the more, which is what is so cool. So magic is the result of our higher consciousness plus higher consciousness plus, actually. So, sorry.
Yeah, we have that in season 8. It's higher consciousness plus a million pluses.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, how many pluses are we going to be in this explanation? But magic is the result of our higher consciousness plus, along with our knowing plus, and the divine's connection to the all.
If all is possible, and you're the divine, and you're connected to it, you can make it happen.
Yeah.
But that's just complete and total freedom.
Yes.
As in, like, no reality we've ever known we're beholden to.
Exactly. And that's what actually shortcuts us to bliss.
Cool.
So the more we can operate, so we're living in our fate, We're utilizing magic to the best of our ability. Note I said best of our ability with magic, but not fate. Fate's the given, that's the flow. Magic is something that, while it is effortless, requires that consciousness. But again, not consciousness. Isn't that what they said yesterday or something?
Yeah, you don't need to be conscious of your consciousness.
Exactly. So when we are operating from that, it makes sense then that we can get to bliss faster.
Makes sense.
It does. I like when it's kind of logical, even if it's spirit logic.
Yeah.
So.
But most of us aren't really in a position to live this way.
I know,
So,
right?
so are there any easier ways to access and exercise magic whilst living in a 3D world?
It's now moment is really the answer to that.
You're effectively addressing what ails you in your daily life,
Yes.
right? It is allowing the uncertainty of the future to pass by because, and I guess that's why trust is critical for a foundation for 5D life. And therefore you can actually just be really present in the now moment. Because the thing is, uncertainty is just the hangover from our karma, right?
I mean,
it's the, if my past is any indication for my future, then anything can happen, but yes, it will most likely be bad. Whilst it's true that anything is possible, the more you're in your fate, the more you're out of your karma, the more it's actually the yummy stuff that ends up, because why would you write shit stuff?
Yeah.
We're not here to suffer. As we said in the last episode, we weren't meant to be in a shitty world, living shitty lives forever. Why would you come along for this fucking ride? Why would there be this rise in consciousness now? Why would all these things be happening if the world was meant to stay as it was, which was pretty fucking shit, right? And at the same time, like, what I've noticed is, we've always said it, experience makes normal. We said it in the last episode, in the past couple of episodes. So our fate, yes, accounts for all things, but they're things that are manageable for us. Like, it's not meant to be catastrophic, and we're meant to be responsible and powerful enough to address what happens to us and keep going in a nice way. It's just our brain going, well, this is how it's always been, so this is how it's going to be. This is how we're going to have to navigate within it. And then we're not cracking open the door. We're not cracking open the window or opening the door or allowing ourselves to see any third way. We're just creating what we've always known, because, as I said, you walk into that room not as the most beautiful person in the room. You walk into that room feeling a bit shit. And then that's how you navigate the world. So by allowing our brains to write our futures based on our pasts, we're allowing that layering of time. We're like, I don't know, falling through the trapdoor.
Yeah, or landing in circles, right? Where, maybe we're out of our karma, but we're just repeating old familiar patterns, but feeling worse and worse and ickier about it every time, but feeling like we can't do anything about it. Or
Exactly.
So,
but at the same time, and as we explained in Karmic Affair with circles, that you're always moving forward. You're just maybe moving forward too slowly. And so that's why it feels like that. Yeah. And we have to have compassion for ourselves, because if experience makes normal, we have to allow those experiences to happen. And sometimes we might not even notice that those experiences are happening.
Some people will just sit in that shit a little longer, or just to, move in that loop a little bit longer. Until they just either get really sick of it or they just get brave enough. A lot of people who are stuck in that really fail to answer a very simple question of what they want. Knowing what you don't want is not the same thing.
No, it's not.
So it is important for somebody to be very clear about what it is they want, not to manifest it, but because the moment they can connect to that part of their truth is the moment they cannot ignore it.
Yes.
So even if they do nothing about it, because they throw
there.
a million excuses in the way, it's there. A lot of people will stay in really uncomfortable places, either because they really are trying to learn and grow and evolve out of something, or really it's because they don't know what they want. They'll just say, well, I don't want this.
If you say to me, I don't know what I want, which I've been in those positions before, then you are courageous enough to simply put yourself in positions to figure that out.
And that's now.
Yes.
When you're putting yourself in the situations to figure things out, what you're also acknowledging is that I have to be present and I have to live in the now in order to be able to figure this out. Because in the present is when we are conscious, we are aware of all things. So that awareness is what brings us to greater and greater consciousness, because we can just understand there's more to our existence than merely existing. Right? Because you could be sitting around playing all these scenarios out in your head,
but you're not actually living.
No, you're really coming at it from, but you are in some random way because you're in your head, you're creating all those quote unquote possibilities, which
Yes,
depending
that's
on
actually
your
really
filter,
beautiful.
well, it's beautiful, but depending on your filter, it could also be somewhat negative and unpleasant.
When I've allowed myself to lean into my rainbows and unicorns approach of life, right? And people say I have a very rich fantasy life, imaginations. It's probably why I'm able to do all the things I do. But in living from that space, I made that real. And it was only by living in that space I made that real, because it's like that line, you know, from the Adele song, I don't know why I'm scared I've been here before. Every feeling, every word, I've imagined it all. Right? Is that you can, yes, live from that space, your ex-karmic reality of all I know is pain, so all I will know is pain. But if you slowly, like experience makes normal, get yourself used to accepting there's a bigger possibility, and then coming from that space cannot but be your reality regardless of what happens. And what will happen are the feelings. Maybe not in the way you thought, maybe better. And I know all of this through love. Love has moved me into living fully. It's put like all this light through me, and then allowed that light to inform my choices, inform my path. And it got me to where I can say my life is amazing. And all I have to do to keep enjoying it is to keep putting that light in. Because that is who I was always meant to become. I was meant to become the living embodiment of rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah.
But I could never let myself do that when I thought that they were going to hurt me. But once I could really get used to it, once I could really allow my heart to be bigger than just my heart, almost, I could make my world look like that too.
So when we really want to understand magic, all we really have to be able to ask ourselves is, am I ready to be present?
Yeah.
Can I be fully present to my life? I mean, most people wouldn't be able to answer that.
No, but the truth is, if you're, that's why the karmic undoing process, that's why all the things you go through, because at some point you just learn the humility that it's not what I thought it was, and it can be so much better than I even know. Yes. The next moment will be just as great, if not more.
Thank you for listening. For more information, articles, and inspiration, find us at karmasmybitch.com and at karmasmybitch.insta.
And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review.